Hey Jack, welcome back to part 3 in my response to your message to me. I'm going to read this next section and we'll talk about it. You said, and she has made comments that it is unnatural for people to be married. She has complained she wants a man who is directive, a big planner like her, and someone who creates big meals and hosts gatherings. Now, I took your first part of that, where you said she has made comments that it's unnatural for people to be married, as maybe you didn't really explain yourself here, so I'm going to extrapolate that you're saying it doesn't look like she wants to be married, that she doesn't seem to value marriage. That's all I could immediately come to. And then the general theme here is that she is expressing things that she wants or that she believes that kind of disturb you, right? That she might not value marriage, that she wants you to be a certain way. And when you hear those, you're like, I don't know if I want to do that or I can do that. And we'll talk about that a little bit in the next video, but I want to talk about one thing here, which is why I wanted to stop and do this section. And that is this. Humans, and women are no exception, we all say stuff all the time. We say all kinds of stuff. And if a person we're in a relationship with weighs the details of our words a little bit with a little bit too much scrutiny, it's unhelpful in a relationship. At least in expressing these kinds of things, because when we're hearing each other as humans, we're hearing people through our own filter, and that filter includes our insecurities, it includes our fears, it includes our anxieties and our shame. And so your wife said some things to you, and I get it, my wife has said lots of stuff in 30 years of a relationship. It can be disquieting and uncomfortable to hear some of that, but I want you to choose in those moments to not hone in on the details of things she's saying, like marriage doesn't make sense, or I want a man that can make big meals and host gatherings and can clearly plan and direct. So what can help instead is to look for what is the deeper desire that Amy has here, right? And you can ask yourself a question like, let me see. I can't read the font from here. Hold on a second. You can ask yourself a question, well, what would she get if I was like that? What is the feeling that appears within her? If I were the guy that were making these big meals and hosting gatherings and directing like this way, and I was a big planner, what does she get to experience that she doesn't now? And that could be a much more productive and effective way to experience what your wife is saying, because you're looking for her deeper need and you're not getting focused instead on what I would say is her brain strategy of how that need would be met. A great kind of correlation, maybe to help you understand this as a man, is a man might walk into his house and declare to his wife, you know what, I've been feeling kind of rotten, and I think I would just feel better if we had sex 6 times a week. And so what I really want is a woman that wants to have sex 6 times a week. Now, if you said that to most women in the kind of life you're describing, they would be put off. And they would be put off for a number of reasons. One, they would say, I got other things to do than spend 6 days a week making you feel better via sex. And if a man was saying that to me about the life he wanted, I would slow him down and say, well, what do you get for having sex 6 days a week? What is it you're really after? And we would quickly work out it's not about anything physical for the man. It's the man's strategy to feel connected. And so his deeper need there is connection, right? And so men and women, we confuse constantly when we're talking our deeper needs and our strategy to get them. And so when your wife is communicating to you, she has deeper needs or things she wants to feel in a partner, and she has her strategy or her imaginations for how she would feel those things. And in her mind, She would feel those things if you hosted the big dinner parties and if you did this kind of directing and you did this kind of leading. But that's an unknown. Who knows? Until you did that, we wouldn't know if that checks that box. But also, what if there's another way to check that box when you understand there's a deeper need, and that when you are your authentic self, you can meet some of those, I don't want to keep calling it needs, but desires, right? What does Amy want to see in the relationship? What is the deeper thing? What would leading and directing and planning and hosting these things, what would it do inside of her, right? What is her emotional desire in that? And can you meet that another way that is authentic to you? Because you go on to say, I support her and I participate in this stuff, but that is not enough for her. I do not lead them. I know my authentic self does not want to lead these things. I have tried. I have led them in the wrong way. She takes over and I think, what's the point? All right, well, totally get this. This is part of being on somebody else's treadmill. Sometimes in relationships, what nice guys do is they try to say, well, what would make them happy with me? And we just go about getting on their treadmill of whatever their idea is that would make them happy. And that's how you become enmeshed. You start trying to respond to every time a woman says jump with how high. And it's you start losing your authenticity as a man. You stop having things like integrity and values and character. You start just doing whatever your partner is saying would make them happy. And that's a very wishy-washy way to be as a man, but it's also incredibly frustrating for you to do, because it's going to be shifting all the time. One day it might look like leading this big event, and another day it might look like moving over and getting out of the way so she could do it. And so that's part of what happens when you just get in someone else's lane. And so you fix that by understanding why you want to get in someone's lane in the first place. Why are you creating dependency? Why are you trying to make her happy? It's because you want something from her in exchange. And that's where the deep work is, right? The reason you're trying to keep your wife happy is because she controls all this power in your life that you don't. And so when we do that in a partner, when we hand them all kinds of power and agency over our future, our present, our life, and we're like, look, you're in charge of all of it, then we have to get up every day with this anxiety, like, I better keep her happy or she's not going to handle my needs very well. That's what it means to be enmeshed. That's what it means to be in a dependency-based relationship, is you start living to appease and placate your spouse. You don't live with authenticity. You don't live based on your own map, your own compass. You don't live based on your own value system. You're basically following your idol around, asking what they need to give you the goods. And that's exactly how you're living. And so the way to get out of all that is to destroy your idol, not destroy your wife, but to destroy the relationship you have that sees her as the giver of life, that sees her as the one that bestows and blesses you with all these good things. How do you do that? Well, you start creating the life you want within yourself instead of looking to an idol for it. That's the pattern, right? And so that's where the deep work is. And when you do that, when you break the power of dependency in your life, which is done by overcoming your judgment and contempt and shame for yourself within yourself, you start taking your power back. You start taking ownership over things in your life. You start walking around with self-reliance instead of dependency. What ends up happening is it changes your relationship with all those idols. They're no longer idols, they're peers. They're not above you, they're equals. And when they're equals, they're not above you, they have nothing you want, you stop living a life on their treadmill because you have no reason to be on their treadmill. The only reason you're doing it now is because you're rewarded for it, or you're seeking reward for it. And so I hope there's a lot of stuff we talked about there, lots of themes, but understanding her words, is hitting you a certain way because you don't realize this from your perspective. I could see it. Anybody who's living this can see it. That her words are agitating to you because it feels like your idol is telling you, this is what I need to be appeased. And you're like, I can't do that. And you're right. Well, you can't. But I would question the whole thing. You don't need to. You don't need to appease your wife. Your job in the universe, your role, and the reason you're here is not to make another human being happy. None of us are here for that reason. I was not born into the world to make my wife happy. I was born into the world to experience life as a being. I'm a human being. You're a human being. We're not human doings, right? Your wife, she's here. My wife's here to experience life through themselves. And we get mixed up thinking that other people have a responsibility to make my life great. That's dependency. And as soon as you let that go and identify why you do that in the first place, your life will begin to change, and it'll begin to change dramatically, as you've seen men in our community report. So I think what I would focus on in the meantime is realizing, hey, I'm probably experiencing a little bit of confirmation bias as well, meaning I'm going to hear my wife say things that confirm my deepest fears and perhaps my own insecurities and my own ideas of how it would end this. And so I think some of that is making her words jump out of the moment to you, and you're hearing like, hey, this can't work, it's impossible. And all of that, I know from experiences, it all comes back to shame, fear, anxiety, insecurity, those related to judgment over yourself. We'll talk about that more as we move ahead together, but I wanted you to understand how all of this is trying to fit together. So I will revisit some of these ideas in another video coming up.